For next week, we have a reading we're going to discuss on Wednesday. It is Malcolm Gladwell's article, Listening to Khakis. Click on the Sunday for the week, and it's not there. Let's change that. First result when I Google it, comes right up. Article originally from the New Yorker, 23 years ago looks like. Very relevant to our ad analysis. And it is now available on our Google Calendar right there. There we go. It is listed on week 8 of our Blackboard page, so you can get to it either way. We are going to discuss it on Wednesday. I realize today is Friday. I meant to have this lecture up yesterday, but so you don't have to rush over the next few days reading and understanding the article. But make sure you've read and understand it for discussion on Wednesday. We're going to look at some advertising on Monday in class and practice analyzing it, sort of the way we did last week. And the main two tools we're going to use for that are the rhetorical triangle I should say appeals, because there's two rhetorical triangles. And logical fallacies. Those are things like attacking the person, circular logic, slippery slope, etc., right? We'll be doing that on Monday. In this video, I wanted to show you a cold reading of an ad, meaning I'm just going to find an ad and practice our outline. So on our assignment sheet for Essay 3, also available through Blackboard and through our Google Calendar, you click on that link there, and that's the same one that's listed under the essay due date. So either the outline or the essay, click on that, it'll take you to our assignment sheet. And as always, the last page of the essay assignment sheet is the outline assignment sheet. First, I want to correct myself. We don't need to have secondary sources. That's an old part of the assignment sheet. Also, I mentioned an arguable thesis. This is a Comp 2 concept. We don't have to do that. An arguable thesis basically says that you're coming up with an idea that most people would not agree with, i.e. something worth arguing over. For example, if we looked at John Updike's A and P and we wrote an essay about that, your arguable thesis could be something like Sammy is a hero, right? We kind of agreed as a class that Sammy, whether he does the right thing or not, is doing it for questionable reasons. So most readers kind of don't really care too much for Sammy because he's sort of this kind of creepy guy, and ultimately he makes this big teenage gesture quitting his job when it doesn't really do him any good and it may do bad, right? He's lost a job for one thing. Lengel, his former boss, knows his parents. So we kind of judge Sammy, I think, fairly. So if you went in a different direction and said Sammy's a hero, that's an arguable idea because a lot of people are going to argue with it. So that's arguable thesis in a nutshell. But we don't have to have an arguable thesis in our essay because we haven't covered it yet. It's something that usually we cover in Comp 2. So ignore that. Everything else is good information, tips on how to format your outline and kind of what to look for. So I'm going to come up with an outline here. Let's look at print ads. It's interesting. Let's look at some more of those. Often when I'm looking for something to write about, I'll do the Google image hop, you know, where you Google image something and then you just kind of look around, either at related images or the initial search result itself. That's interesting. I saw one the other day. There it is. All right. That's interesting. So this is kind of a minimalist ad here. There's no text, um, a simple image. We only know the company that it's advertising because they've got the recognizable logo down here. Um, so, all right. Hey, Lobster Dog. Let's do this. All right. I'm going to call it the Wolverine ad. Need my 4-line header. Need a double space stuff, right? Put some page numbers on here. Center my title. Arial is useful but ugly. We're gonna spice it up a little bit. Go Calibri. I will enlarge the font so we can see it a little better. Normally I would stick to about 12, but so that we can actually see the video, let's do that. Okay, what do I put on my outline? Just take a look at the assignment sheet. Let me bring it up here. All right. List the ad I'm using where I found it. MLA Works cited. Okay. Ads of the World. Okay, cool. What the heck is adsoftheworld.com? How do I find out what that is? Let's look at the bottom of the page. Go away. Cookie policy, Ads of the World, creative advertising community. I'm going to look at their homepage and see what we've got. Part of the Clio network. Let's look at that. All I'm doing here is I'm sniffing out the source of this web page. You can kind of tell just by looking at it that it's not really clickbait, but it doesn't seem like it's an actual like piece of source of journalism or anything, right? It seems more like an ad agency type approach. Hey, speaking of Wolverine. Oh, good, good. Clio. All right, let's go down here. Clio, what is Clio? They are an entertainment conglomerate. Okay, so I found it on this site here, Ads of the World. It's going to be our parent site. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to call the ad that. Now, I've just invented the name for this ad, which is obviously not the official name for our ad here. Whoops, there we go. Although this may be an official name, I'm not sure. But it's immediately recognizable. If I Google the name I'm giving this ad, then it's going to come right up. And that's what matters. When we're putting an MLA citation together, what really matters is that we are able to find it when we look for it. You're telling me how to get to it. We're giving the website that we found it from and the name of it. So that's what really is important there. is our date of access right there. And the other thing I want to put on there is the actual parent company, which is Ads of the World. I'm going to italicize that. The same way I would italicize the container title if it were a print source. What do I mean by that? The container title would be a book. So for example, if I had a physical book that had a bunch of photographs of ads from a certain company or a certain era, the container would be the book. So I would put the book title in italics and the ad name first off right there. If I had a specific photographer or creator of the ad, the name would go here in the front. But since I don't, I'm just going to put the actual item itself right there. And I've got container. Since it's an online source, I have the website itself. And in fact, let's grab this one, since that's the actual URL of the ad itself. And I'll replace it here. And what we need to do with any MLA Works cited format is we need to have a hanging indent, which is this right here. You see how the second line is indented? That is opposite of our typical paragraph indent, where the first line is indented. How do we do that? I'm going to grab my MLA citation here. I'm going to go up to my toolbar. I'm going to drag over 1/2 inch. That's our indent. And you'll notice that it's grabbing both lines. So it indented both. So I drag that, and then I grab the tiny thin rectangle, and I drag it back over. And that's my hanging indent. It looks funny because this is all one quote-unquote word right here, so that looks kind of weird, but that is what we need. We need that hanging indent where the very first line is flush with the 1 inch left margin and the other lines are there. I know this is terribly boring, but a lot of you are going to mess this up, and I'm going to say, why did you mess this up? And this is how you get hanging indent. You need to have that on every Works cited page. And in fact, let's take a quick look. I'm sure I have a Works cited example somewhere in here. I'm on another screen, which is why nothing is happening. Here is an old paper of mine using the old typewriter font Courier New. Works cited page. Notice it's alphabetized. And notice that you can immediately tell where a new entry begins. This is a new entry. This is a new entry. At a glance, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 entries on that first page right there. And you can immediately tell each one from the other, even though there's no space between them, right? The double spacing is even throughout. But just like with paragraphs, you can tell where a new paragraph begins at a glance. On a Works Cited page, you can immediately tell where a new entry begins. So it has its own kind of clean organization, right? That is what we want on our Works Cited entry. So I've got my ad listed. Okay, I'm going to put in cultural context. I'm going to put in rhetorical appeals. I'm going to put in my thesis, my main idea, major claims, and secondary sources. Remember, we don't need actual secondary sources. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy that, and I'm just going to paste it right here. Boom. So I know, all right, what am I going to do next? Cultural context. Oops, I'm still in hanging indent right here. I don't want that. I want the opposite. I want a standard paragraph indent. I'm going to drag my bottom line to the margin. I'm going to drag my top line to 1/2 inch. And there we go. I am going to put an extra space here just so we kind of see that. Let's think about this. So what I'm doing here is I'm connecting the specific ad to a broader cultural context. In class, we've talked about zooming in or zooming out, and here I am zooming out. I'm taking one specific ad, our McDonald's Wolverine, and I am zooming out to a broader cultural context and why they would choose to use this image to sell, in this case, fries. Let's see, why do we have a lot of comic book movies? Well, how about this? What I'm talking about here is personal fable. The idea of a personal fable is that we are all the main character in our own story, right? We can't escape that. Because we are locked into our own heads and perspectives, we are the main character. We're the protagonist of the story of our lives, right? So no matter how we deal with that, we have that perspective. And part of that is wanting to feel like we are meaningful, our lives are meaningful, or we can change things. And comic books are one way of kind of indulging in that, right? We see these heroic characters with all these powers, and we fantasize about having, if not the ability to fly or shoot lasers from our eyes, then at least the ability to be powerful enough to change the world for the better, or to protect the things that we love about the world, or the people we love, right? So there's a little bit of cultural context right there for my advertisement, right? And actually, let me shrink it down just a little bit so I can get it on one page, and then we'll zoom in. I like that better than just having a large font. Okay, so we have some cultural context there, some things that we can work with. Now we need to get the rhetorical appeals of the ad. Remember, that's ethos, pathos, logos, kairos. And since I'm just putting together an outline, I don't even have to do this in paragraph form, right? I could, if I wanted to, I could be using traditional outline form. I could do away with the paragraph indent, and I could just do one. If I hit tab, it'll automatically, use the outline format. Actually, hold on. If I want to go back to have a B here instead of a 2, I can use my little decrease indent button. It'll automatically do that for me. Oops. So what I'm doing here, and actually, and with a outline format, I can decrease the spacing so it looks a little better. Hold on, I got to change this. My page numbers are still Arial, and that's hideous. I don't like that. Wait, come here. Arial, you sneaky font. There we go. So this format here is the same information. I'm just putting it in outline format instead of paragraph format. Whichever one you prefer is okay, as long as you make it clear that you are following the guidelines of the outline, right? So next we're going to do rhetorical appeals. So for ethos, the ad uses, how is the ad using ethos? Remember, ethos is morality, ethics, or authority. First of all, what do we notice about the ad? Well, fries are a very recognizable element of McDonald's advertising. They often make their golden arches image out of fries. They look like fries themselves. The color and the general kind of shape reminds us of fries. They're using this recognizable brand. We see this anywhere in the world. Anyone who sees this knows what it is, right? Also, look at the background. It's this bright red background, which is at the traditional McDonald's color. Usually we see the M directly on red. They've put it on green here either because of a regional logo. It's possible that this ad was designed for somewhere in Europe or a certain part of the world where this color is used. Or, more likely, I think, we can see that they needed a different color to contrast with the red. They didn't want to put the yellow right directly on the red to distract from the fries, I think so. But we have a couple of things going on here. The ad uses signature colors and images of McDonald's, colon, the bright red background and golden arches. Right? These elements all right, fair enough. For logos, now this one might be tricky. Is there anything logical going on here? Well, the product itself, the fries, we do see. So we could say, I just used the word provides. Let's think of a different word. There's not much logos. Let's see. Let's say, how about this? Oops. How about I use the right buttons? Why? Why don't you like that? I hate, oh, because this is an S and it wants subject-verb agreement. I hate the little blue squigglies. I'm just doing a little mini paragraph for each rhetorical appeal, right? Again, you can use any format. So this is like a semi-paragraph approach. Maybe I'll underline this section, right? So we know that we're doing that. I could use the traditional outline if I wanted to. That would be well suited for rhetorical appeals. I could have a section for each appeal, right? So the reason I say pathos is perhaps the strongest of the appeals is because any ad that relies on a simple image and doesn't have text or words often is going to be pathos driven because we respond emotionally, viscerally, primitively to images differently than we respond to words. And this is because language is an invention. It's a cultural and social invention, right? You could, there's some gray area, but basically there's no language in nature, right? There's communication, there's signaling, but language itself, especially written language, is something we've invented. So that tends to be more of a logic, more of an intellectual response, whereas an image tends to be more of a primal response, just in general. So when you see an ad that doesn't have a lot of words involved, you can start looking for pathos. And we see that here. What emotions is the image trying to conjure? Well, let's go back to our idea of cultural context to get a clue for that. What is it talking about here? Well, the idea Now, you don't have to be a comic book nerd to know this. I would say that because of ever since Hugh Jackman portrayed Wolverine in the X-Men movies, the idea of Wolverine's a pretty common pop culture reference. So even if you didn't know any of this, you could easily Google it, and a minute or two on Wikipedia is going to give you this kind of brief overview of Wolverine. He's a very archetypal character, meaning that this sort of anti-hero who's all about getting even, not following the rules, finding his own path. That is all a very kind of archetypal idea. It's the Han Solo, right, of characters. There are a lot of those out there, and they've been particularly focused on in the last 10 or 20 years because we like to believe that we can get things done without following the rules, or that we can be different, or forge our own path, right? So why would the ad, especially for McDonald's, bring up all of this? That doesn't seem to make sense at first, right? And just like when we perform the method on texts, we have to think about what doesn't seem to fit, what seems like it doesn't belong, right? And this might be a good place to do it. And so often when I'm writing an outline or preparing for an essay in any way, I'll just jot down questions I have, and one of them is, um, right? Why do they do that? And now that's not something we have to address here in the outline. That's for later on in the essay. But I might make a note of that so that I can come back later and look at this idea, right? So my thesis about the ad, my idea. Now, this one might be a little tricky, but we could look at this idea here, why do they make the connection? So that might be something worth writing about. Even if we don't know what it is right now, we could say, so this works as a main idea. I don't even really have a main idea, but I have a direction. I have a direction of inquiry here. I know that I'm going to try to figure out why they're using this image that seems so unlike what you would expect out of a McDonald's ad, right? But often, remember, that thing that doesn't seem to fit is worth investigating, because if you can get to the bottom of it, it might start to give you some insight into the ad itself. Often things that don't seem like they would work turn out to be solutions, right? Um, and we know that with advertising, if we see an ad that we expect and that doesn't surprise us, we may not remember it. It may not have an impact. And that is the worst thing an ad can do, is be forgettable, right? Is not sell, not register on our consciousness. So even if you don't have a specific main idea and you just have kind of a direction you're going in, that can work for our outline, right? So if I'm going to have claims, remember these need to be complete sentences. And we're going to say, let's look back. What claims might we want out of this? Importance of cultural context regarding comics. How do I turn that into a complete sentence? All right. Cultural background. I can never remember if I should capitalize century. I don't think I should. I'm not a real estate company. Boom, complete sentence, right? Again, I just went back and looked at some of the material I had already incorporated in the outline and thought, okay, what can we talk about in this essay? All right, claims. There's a simple sentence. Boom. I have a paragraph talking about the emotional appeal. And there we might talk about how, like, when we don't see words, it suggests that we're supposed to know without reading or hearing language what's going on. And that suggests that if we don't get it, we're an outsider. Or it suggests that it's such a powerful image that it should be understood without explanation, right? Things like that, right? we remember what juxtaposition means? It's one of our vocabulary words. There we go. Now this is very similar to my main idea, right? So I'd have to be careful here to make sure that I'm not just repackaging my main idea as a claim, because all the claims need to be pointing towards the main idea, right? So that might be something I need to kind of tweak later on, but for the outline, it's fine. So if I were to look at this outline, I mean, there we go, we've got it, right? I could even have it, some of it in different form, right? I know this is maybe too small to read, but I just want to be able to see kind of the whole thing at once. We've got our cultural context, our rhetorical appeals, main idea, and claims. There we go. That is an outline. Now, if I can do this in, 20 minutes or whatever, over a pretty simple ad, there's not a ton to work with here, right? But by drawing on what the ad is drawing on, comic books, the major colors here, the rhetorical appeals, we can sort of see that we might have a direction in which to go to come up with this. I will make this available on our Blackboard page. I'll put it up on week 8 so we have it and can reference it as we watch the video and as we look at our own outline, which is not going to be due for another almost 2 weeks, but I don't want us to sleep on this. I want us to be thinking about ads. I want us to be, every time we watch or see or hear an ad, I want us to be thinking, if I had to write about this, what would I write?